Genghis Khan was the founder and first great Khan of the Mongol Empire, which became the largest contiguous empire in history after his death. He came to power by uniting many of the nomadic tribes of Northeast Asia. After founding the empire and being proclaimed Genghis Khan, meaning the oceanic, universal ruler, he launched the Mongol invasions that conquered most of Eurasia, reaching as far west as Poland in Europe and the Levant in the Middle East. Campaigns initiated in his lifetime include those against the Qara Khitai, Khwarezmia, and the Western Xia and Jin dynasties, and raids into medieval Georgia, the Kievan Rus, and Volga Bulgaria. Contemporary and modern sources describe Genghis Khan's conquests as wholesale destruction on an unprecedented scale, causing great demographic changes and a drastic decline of population as a result of mass exterminations and famine. A conservative estimate amounts to about 4 million civilians, whereas other figures range from 40 to 60 million, who lost their lives as a consequence of Genghis Khan's military campaigns. In contrast, Buddhist Uyghurs of the Kingdom of Kocho, who willingly left the Qara Khitai Empire to become Mongol vassals, viewed him as a liberator. Genghis Khan was also portrayed positively by early Renaissance sources due to the incredible spread of culture, science and technological ideas by the Mongol Empire. By the end of his life, the Mongol Empire occupied a substantial portion of Central Asia and China. Due to his exceptional military successes, Genghis Khan is often considered to be one of the greatest conquerors of all time. Before Genghis Khan died, he assigned Ogedei Khan as his successor. Later his grandsons split his empire into khanates. Genghis Khan died in 1227 after defeating the Western Xia. By his request, his body was buried in an unknown location somewhere in Mongolia. His descendants extended the Mongol Empire across most of Eurasia by conquering or creating vassal states in all of modern-day China, Korea, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and substantial portions of Eastern Europe and Southwest Asia. Many of these invasions repeated the earlier large-scale slaughters of local populations. As a result, Genghis Khan and his empire have a fearsome reputation in local histories. Beyond his military accomplishments, Genghis Khan also advanced the Mongol Empire in other ways. He decreed the adoption of the Uyghur script as the Mongol Empire's writing system. He also practiced meritocracy and encouraged religious tolerance in the Mongol Empire, unifying the nomadic tribes of Northeast Asia. Present-day Mongolians regard him as the founding father of Mongolia. He is also credited with bringing the Silk Road under one cohesive political environment. This brought relatively easy communication and trade between Northeast Asia, Muslim Southwest Asia, and Christian Europe, expanding the cultural horizons of all three areas. Early life. Lineage. Genghis Khan was related on his father's side to Kabul Khan, Ambagai, and Hotula Khan, who had headed the Kamag Mongol Confederation and were descendants of Bodonshir Munkag 900. When the Jurchen Jin dynasty switched support from the Mongols to the Tatars in 1161, they destroyed Kabul Khan. Genghis Khan's father, Yasuge, leader of the Kiat Borjigin clan and nephew to Ambagai and Hotula Khan, emerged as the head of the ruling Mongol clan. This position was contested by the rival Teocheud clan, who descended directly from Ambagai. When the Tatars grew too powerful after 1161, the Jin switched their support from the Tatars to the Kharites. Birth. Little is known about Genghis Khan's early life, due to the lack of contemporary written records. The few sources that give insight into this period often contradict. Temujin means blacksmith. According to Rashid al-Din Hamadani, Chinos constituted that branch of the Mongols which existed from Ergenekon through melting the iron mountainside. There existed a tradition which viewed Genghis Khan as a blacksmith. Genghis's given name was Temujin was equated with Turco-Mongol Temurchi, blacksmith. Paul Pelliot saw that the tradition according to which Genghis was a blacksmith was unfounded though well established by the middle of the 13th century. Genghis Khan was probably born in 1162 in Dalun Boldog, near the mountain Burkhan Khaldan in the rivers Onan and Kerlan in modern-day northern Mongolia, close to the current capital Ulaanbaatar. The Secret History of the Mongols reports that Temujin was born grasping a blood clot in his fist, a traditional sign that he was destined to become a great leader. He was the first son of Holan, second wife of his father Yasuge, who was a Kiad chief prominent in the Kamag Mongol Confederation and an ally of Togrul of the Karaiti tribe. According to the Secret History, Temujin was named after the Tatar chief Temujin Uj whom his father had just captured. Yasuke's clan was Borjigin, and Holan was from the Olhunat sub-lineage of the Konjarad tribe. Like other tribes, they were nomads. Temujin's noble background made it easier for him to solicit help from and eventually consolidate the other Mongol tribes. Early life and family. Temujin had 3 brothers Hisar, Hachiyun, and Temuj, 1 sister Temujin, and 2 half-brothers Begtar and Belgute. Like many of the nomads of Mongolia, Temujin's early life was difficult. His father arranged a marriage for him and delivered him at age 9 to the family of his future wife Borte of the tribe Konjarad. Temujin was to live there serving the head of the household Dai Setsun until the marriageable age of 12. While heading home, his father ran into the neighboring Tatars, who had long been Mongol enemies, and they offered him food that poisoned him. Upon learning this, Temujin returned home to claim his father's position as chief. But the tribe refused this and abandoned the family, leaving it without protection. For the next several years, the family lived in poverty, surviving mostly on wild fruits, ox carcasses, marmots, and other small game killed by Temujin and his brothers. Temujin's older half-brother Begtar began to exercise power as the eldest male in the family and would eventually have the right to claim Holin, who was not his own mother, as a wife. Temujin's resentment erupted during one hunting excursion when Temujin and his brother Qasar killed Begtar. In a raid around 1177, Temujin was captured by his father's former allies, the Teocheud, and enslaved, reportedly with a kang, a sort of portable stocks. With the help of a sympathetic guard, he escaped from the Jir at night by hiding in a river crevice. The escape earned Temujin a reputation. Soon, Jelm and Boorchu joined forces with him. They and the guard's son Chalan eventually became generals of Genghis Khan. At this time, none of the tribal confederations of Mongolia were united politically, and arranged marriages were often used to solidify temporary alliances. Temujin grew up observing the tough political climate, which included tribal warfare, thievery, raids, corruption, and revenge between confederations, compounded by interference from abroad, such as from China to the south. Temujin's mother Holin taught him many lessons, especially the need for strong alliances to ensure stability in Mongolia. Wives, concubines, and children. As was common for powerful Mongol men, Genghis Khan had many wives and concubines. He frequently acquired wives and concubines from empires and societies that he had conquered. These women were often princesses or queens that were taken captive or gifted to him. Genghis Khan gave several of his high-status wives their own ordos or camps to live in and manage. Each camp also contained junior wives, concubines, and even children. It was the job of the Keshig, Mongol imperial guard, to protect the yurts of Genghis Khan's wives. The guards had to pay particular attention to the individual yurt and camp in which Genghis Khan slept, which could change every night as he visited different wives. When Genghis Khan set out on his military conquests, he usually took one wife with him and left the rest of his wives, and concubines, to manage the empire in his absence. Borte. The marriage between Borte and Genghis Khan, then known as Temujin, was arranged by her father and Yasuge, Temujin's father, when she was 10 and he was 9 years old. Temujin stayed with her and her family until he was called back to take care of his mother and younger siblings, due to the poisoning of Yasuge by Tatar nomads. In 1178, about 7 years later, Temujin traveled downstream along the Keloran River to find Borte. When Borte's father saw that Temujin had returned to marry Borte, he had the pair united as man and wife. With the permission of her father, Temujin took Borte and her mother to live in his family yurt. Borte's dowry was a fine black sable jacket. Soon after the marriage between them took place, the 3 Merkits attacked their family camp at dawn and kidnapped Borte. She was given to one of their warriors as a spoil of war. Temujin was deeply distressed by the abduction of his wife and remarked that his bed was made empty, and his breast was torn apart. Temujin rescued her several months later with the aid of his allies Wang Khan and Jamuka. Many scholars describe this event as one of the key crossroads in Temujin's life, which moved him along the path towards becoming a conqueror. Borte was held captive for 8 months, and gave birth to Hochi soon after she was rescued. This left doubt as to who the father of the child was, because her captor took her as a wife, and could have possibly impregnated her. Despite this, Temujin let Hochi remain in the family and claimed him as his own son. Borte had 3 more sons, Chagatai, 1183–1242, Ogade, 1186–1241, and Tului, 1191–1232. Temujin had many other children with other wives, but they were excluded from the succession. only Borte's sons could be considered to be his heirs. Borte was also the mother to several daughters: Kua Eugen Beki, Alakai Beki, Alaltan, Chechekan, Tumelan, and Tolai. However, the poor survival of Mongol records means it is unclear whether she gave birth to all of them. Yusugin. During his military campaign against the Tatars, Temujin fell in love with Yusugin and took her in as a wife. She was the daughter of a Tatar leader named Yeki Charan that Temujin's army had killed during battle. After the military campaign against the Tatars was over, Yusugin, one of the survivors, went to Temujin, who slept with her. According to the secret history of the Mongols, while they were having sex, Yusugin asked Temujin to treat her well and to not discard her. When Temujin seemed to agree with this, Yusugin recommended that he also marry her sister Yeswei. Both the Tatar sisters, Yusugin and Yeswei, became a part of Temujin's principal wives and were given their own camps to manage. Temujin also took a third woman from the Tatars, an unknown concubine. Yeswei. At the recommendation of her sister Yusugin, Temujin had his men track down and kidnap Yeswei. When she was brought to Temujin, he found her every bit as pleasing as promised, and so he married her. The other wives, mothers, sisters and daughters of the Tatars had been parceled out and given to Mongol men. The Tatar sisters, Yusugin and Yeswei, were two of Genghis Khan's most influential wives. Genghis Khan took Yeswei with him when he set out on his final expedition against the Tangut Empire. Kulan. Kulan entered Mongol history when her father, the Merkit leader Dayar Yusan, surrendered to Temujin in the winter of 1203–04 and gave her to him. But at least according to the secret history of the Mongols, Kulan and her father were detained by Nyaa, one of Temujin's officers, who was apparently trying to protect them from Mongol soldiers who were nearby. After they arrived 3 days later than expected, Temujin suspected that Nyaa was motivated by his carnal feelings towards Kulan to help her and her father. While Temujin was interrogating Nyaa, Kulan spoke up in his defense and invited Temujin to have sex with her and inspect her virginity personally, which pleased him. In the end, Temujin accepted Dayar Yusan's surrender and Kulan as his new wife. However, Dayar Yusan later retracted his surrender, but he and his subjects were eventually subdued, his possessions plundered, and he himself killed. Temujin continued to carry out military campaigns against the Merkits until their final dispersal in 1218. Kulan was able to achieve meaningful status as one of Temujin's wives and managed one of the large wifely camps, in which other wives, concubines, children and animals lived. She gave birth to a son named Gelazin, who went on to participate with Borte's sons in their father's military campaigns. Mogh Khatun. Mogh Khatun was a concubine of Genghis Khan, and she later became a wife of his son Ogedei Khan. The Persian historian Ata Malik Juvayni records that Mogh Khatun was given to Chinggis Khan by a chief of the Bakhran tribe, and he loved her very much. Ogedei favored her as well, and she accompanied him on his hunting expeditions. She is not recorded as having any children. Urbizu. Urbizu was an empress of Qara Khitai, Mongol Empire, and Naiman. She was a renowned beauty on the plains. She was originally a favored concubine of Ananch Bilge Khan, and after his death, she became the consort of his son Taiyang Khan. Since Taiyang Khan was a useless ruler, Urbizu was in control of almost all power in Naiman politics. She had a daughter named Princess Hunhu with Yelu Jilugu, the ruler of Liao. After Genghis Khan destroyed the Naiman tribe and Taiyang Khan was killed, Urbizu made several offensive remarks regarding Mongols, describing their clothes as dirty and smelly. Yet, she abruptly rescinded her claims and visited Genghis Khan's tent alone. He questioned her about the remarks but was immediately attracted to her beauty. After spending the night with him, Urbizu promised to serve him well, and he took her as one of his empresses. Her status was only inferior to Kulan and Borte. Ibaka Beki. Ibaka was the eldest daughter of the Kare leader Jaka Gambu, who allied with Genghis Khan to defeat the Naimans in 1204. As part of the alliance, Ibaka was given to Genghis Khan as a wife. She was the sister of Begtutmish, who married Genghis Khan's son Hochi, and Sorgatani Beki, who married Genghis Khan's son Tului. After about 2 years of childless marriage, Genghis Khan abruptly divorced Ibaka and gave her to the general Yerchadei, a member of the Uruyat clan and who had killed Jaka Gambu after the latter turned against Genghis Khan. The exact reason for this remarriage is unknown. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Genghis Khan gave Ibaka to Yerchadei as a reward for his service in wounding Nilga Sengam in 1203 and, later, in killing Jaka Gambu. Conversely, Rashid al-Din in Jami al-Tawarikh claims that Genghis Khan divorced Ibaka due to a nightmare in which God commanded him to give her away immediately, and Yurchideh happened to be guarding the tent. Regardless of the rationale, Genghis Khan allowed Ibaka to keep her title as Khatan even in her remarriage, and asked that she would leave him a token of her dowry by which he could remember her. The sources also agree that Ibaka was quite wealthy, uniting the Mongol confederations. In the early 12th century, the Central Asian plateau north of China was divided into several prominent tribal confederations, including Naimans, Merkits, Tatars, Kamag Mongols, and Karites, that were often unfriendly towards each other, as evidenced by random raids, revenge attacks, and plundering. Early attempts at power. Temujin began his ascent to power by offering himself as an ally, or, according to other sources, a vassal, to his father's Anda, sworn brother or blood brother, Togrul, who was Khan of the Karites, and is better known by the Chinese title, Wang Khan, which the Jurchen Jin dynasty granted him in 1197. This relationship was first reinforced when Borte was captured by the Merkits. Temujin turned to Togrul for support, and Togrul offered 20,000 of his Karaite warriors and suggested that Temujin involve his childhood friend Jamuka, who had himself become Khan of his own tribe, the Jadaran. Although the campaign rescued Borte and utterly defeated the Merkits, it also paved the way for the split between Temujin and Jamuka. Before this, they were blood brothers vowing to remain eternally faithful. Rift with Jamuka and defeat at Dalen Balshut. As Jamuka and Temujin drifted apart in their friendship, each began consolidating power, and they became rivals. Jamuka supported the traditional Mongolian aristocracy, while Temujin followed a meritocratic method, and attracted a broader range and lower class of followers. Following his earlier defeat of the Merkits, and a proclamation by the shaman Kokochu that the eternal blue sky had set aside the world for Temujin, Temujin began rising to power. In 1186, Temujin was elected Khan of the Mongols. Threatened by this rise, Jamuka attacked Temujin in 1187 with an army of 30,000 troops. Temujin gathered his followers to defend against the attack, but was decisively beaten in the Battle of Dalen Balshut. However, Jamuka horrified and alienated potential followers by boiling 70 young male captives alive in cauldrons. Togrul, as Temujin's patron, was exiled to the Qara Khitai. The life of Temujin for the next 10 years is unclear, as historical records are mostly silent on that period. Return to power. Around the year 1197, the Jin initiated an attack against their former vassal, the Tatars, with help from the Karites and Mongols. Temujin commanded part of this attack, and after victory, he and Togrul were restored by the Jin to positions of power. The Jin bestowed Togrul with the honorable title of Ong Khan, and Temujin with a lesser title of Zhou Kori. Around 1200, the main rivals of the Mongol Confederation, traditionally the Mongols, were the Naimans to the west, the Merkits to the north, the Tanguts to the south, and the Jin to the east. In his rule and his conquest of rival tribes, Temujin broke with Mongol tradition in a few crucial ways. He delegated authority based on merit and loyalty, rather than family ties. As an incentive for absolute obedience in the Yasa Code of Law, Temujin promised civilians and soldiers wealth from future war spoils. When he defeated rival tribes, he did not drive away their soldiers and abandon their civilians. Instead, he took the conquered tribe under his protection and integrated its members into his own tribe. He would even have his mother adopt orphans from the conquered tribe, bringing them into his family. These political innovations inspired great loyalty among the conquered people, making Temujin stronger with each victory. Rift with Togrul. Sangam, son of Togrul, Wang Khan, envied Genghis Khan's growing power and affinity with his father. He allegedly planned to assassinate Genghis Khan. Although Togrul was allegedly saved on multiple occasions by Genghis Khan, he gave in to his son and became incooperative with Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan learned of Sangam's intentions and eventually defeated him and his loyalists. One of the later ruptures between Genghis Khan and Togrul was Togrul's refusal to give his daughter in marriage to Hochi, Genghis Khan's first son. This was disrespectful in Mongolian culture and led to a war. Togrul allied with Jamuka, who already opposed Genghis Khan's forces. However, the dispute between Togrul and Jamuka, plus the desertion of a number of their allies to Genghis Khan, led to Togrul's defeat. Jamuka escaped during the conflict. This defeat was a catalyst for the fall and eventual dissolution of the Karaite tribe. After conquering his way steadily through the Alki Tatars, Karites, and Yuhas Merkits and acquiring at least one wife each time, Temujin turned to the next threat on the steppe, the Turkic Naimans under the leadership of Tayang Khan, with whom Jamuka and his followers took refuge. The Naimans did not surrender, although enough sectors again voluntarily sided with Genghis Khan. In 1201, a Khwarezmia elected Jamuka as Gur Khan, universal ruler, a title used by the rulers of the Qara Khitai. Jamuka's assumption of this title was the final breach with Genghis Khan, and Jamuka formed a coalition of tribes to oppose him. Before the conflict, several generals abandoned Jamuka, including Subutai, Jelm's well-known younger brother. After several battles, Jamuka was turned over to Genghis Khan by his own men in 1206. According to the secret history, Genghis Khan again offered his friendship to Jamuka. Genghis Khan had killed the men who betrayed Jamuka, stating that he did not want disloyal men in his army. Jamuka refused the offer, saying that there can only be one sun in the sky, and he asked for a noble death. The custom was to die without spilling blood, specifically by having one's back broken. Jamuka requested this form of death, although he was known to have boiled his opponent's generals alive. Sole ruler of the Mongol plains. The part of the Merkit clan that sided with the Naimans were defeated by Subutai, who was by then a member of Genghis Khan's personal guard and later became one of Genghis Khan's most successful commanders. The Naimans' defeat left Genghis Khan as the sole ruler of the Mongol steppe. All the prominent confederations fell or united under his Mongol confederation. Accounts of Genghis Khan's life are marked by claims of a series of betrayals and conspiracies. These include rifts with his early allies such as Jamuka, who also wanted to be a ruler of Mongol tribes, and Wang Khan, his and his father's ally, his son Hochi, and problems with the most important shaman, who allegedly tried to drive a wedge between him and his loyal brother Qasar. His military strategies showed a deep interest in gathering intelligence and understanding the motivations of his rivals, exemplified by his extensive spy network and yam root systems. He seemed to be a quick student, adopting new technologies and ideas that he encountered, such as siege warfare from the Chinese. He was also ruthless, demonstrated by his tactic of measuring against the linchpin, used against the tribes led by Jamuka. As a result, by 1206, Genghis Khan had managed to unite or subdue the Merkits, Naimans, Mongols, Karites, Tatars, Uyghurs, and other disparate smaller tribes under his rule. This was a monumental feat. It resulted in peace between previously warring tribes, and a single political and military force. The union became known as the Mongols. At a Khwarezmia, a council of Mongol chiefs, Genghis Khan was acknowledged as Khan of the consolidated tribes and took the new title, Genghis Khan. The title Khagan was conferred posthumously by his son and successor Ogedei, who took the title for himself, as he was also to be posthumously declared the founder of the Yuan dynasty. Religion. Genghis Khan was a Tengrist, but was religiously tolerant and interested in learning philosophical and moral lessons from other religions. He consulted Buddhist monks, including the Zen monk Haiyan, Muslims, Christian missionaries, and the Taoist monk Chu Chuji. According to the Fozu Lidai Tongzai written by Nyen Chong, b. 1282, Genghis Khan's viceroy Mughali was pacifying Shaanxi in 1219, the homeland of Zen Buddhist monk Haiyan, when one of Mughali's Chinese generals, impressed with Haiyan and his master Zhongguan's demeanor, recommended them to Mughali. Mughali then reported on the two to Genghis Khan, who issued the following decree on their behalf. They truly are men who pray to heaven. I should like to support them with clothes and food and make them chiefs. I'm planning on gathering many of this kind of people. While praying to heaven, they should not have difficulties imposed on them. To forbid any mistreatment, they will be authorized to act as Darkhan, possessor of immunity. Genghis Khan had already met Haiyan in 1214 and been impressed by his reply, refusing to grow his hair in the Mongol hairstyle and allowed him to keep his head shaven. After the death of his master Zhongguan in 1220, Haiyan became the head of the Chinese Zen school during Genghis Khan's rule and was repeatedly recognized as the chief monk in Chinese Buddhism by subsequent Khans until 1257, when he was succeeded as chief monk by another Chan master Shuang Fuyu, the Mongol-appointed abbot of Shaolin Monastery. Genghis Khan summoned and met the Taoist master Chu Chuji, 1148–1227, in Afghanistan in 1222. He thanked Chu Chuji for accepting his invitation and asked if Chu Chuji had brought the medicine of immortality with him. Chu Chuji said there was no such thing as a medicine of immortality but that life can be extended through abstinence. Genghis Khan appreciated his honest reply and asked Chu Chuji who it is that calls him eternal heavenly man, he himself or others. After Chu Chuji replied that others call him by that name, Genghis Khan decreed that from thenceforth Chu Chuji should be called immortal, and appointed him master of all monks in China, noting that heaven had sent Chu Chuji to him. Chu Chuji died in Beijing the same year as Genghis Khan and his shrine became the White Cloud Temple. Following Khans continued appointing Taoist masters of the Shenzhen school at White Cloud Temple. The Taoists lost their privilege in 1258 after the great debate organized by Genghis Khan's grandson Monk Khan when Chinese Buddhists, led by the Mongol-appointed abbot or Shaolin Zhonglao of Shaolin Monastery, Confucians and Tibetan Buddhists allied against the Taoists. Kublai Khan was appointed to preside over this debate, in Shangdu, Xanadu, the third meeting after two debates in Karakoram in 1255 and 1256, in which 700 dignitaries were present. Kublai Khan had already met Heian in 1242 and been swayed towards Buddhism. Genghis Khan's decree exempting Taoists, Buddhists, Christians, Archaeod, and Muslims from tax duties were continued by his successors until the end of the Yuan dynasty in 1368. All the decrees use the same formula and state that Genghis Khan first gave the decree of exemption. Kublai Khan's 1261 decree in Mongolian appointing the elder of the Shaolin Monastery uses the same formula and states, Singus Qanuj Tur Toyad Kagu, D Singsingu, D Dasmad Alaba Alba Gubsari Ulalu Ujan Tn Gri Jalberiju Bidan Iruj, R Ogun Atugai Kim, Gsenjrlg Un Yusuga, R. In Saolim Janglao Da Bariju Yabaga. IJRLG Ogbe. According to the decree of Genghis Khan which says may the Buddhists, Christians, Taoists and Muslims be exempt from all taxation and may they pray to God and continue offering us blessings. I have given this decree to the Shaolin elder to carry it. According to Juvayni, Genghis Khan allowed religious freedom to Muslims during his conquest of Khwarezmia, permitting the recitation of the takbir and the azan. However, Rashid al-Din states there were occasions when Genghis Khan forbade halal butchering. Kublai Khan revived the decree in 1280 after Muslims refused to eat at a banquet. He forbade halal butchering and circumcision. The decree of Kublai Khan was revoked after a decade. Genghis Khan met Wahid ud Din in Afghanistan in 1221 and asked him if the Prophet Muhammad predicted a Mongol conqueror. He was initially pleased with Wahid ud Din but then dismissed him from his service saying, I used to consider you a wise and prudent man, but from this speech of yours, it has become evident to me that you do not possess complete understanding and that your comprehension is but small. Military campaigns. Western Xia dynasty. During the 1206 political rise of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire created by Genghis Khan and his allies shared its western borders with the Western Xia dynasty of the Tanguts. To the east and south was the Jin dynasty, founded by the Manchurian Jurchens, who ruled northern China as well as being the traditional overlords of the Mongolian tribes for centuries. Genghis Khan organized his people, army, and his state to first prepare for war with Western Xia, or Xia, which was close to the Mongolian lands. He correctly believed that the more powerful young ruler of the Jin dynasty would not come to the aid of Xia. When the Tanguts requested help from the Jin dynasty, they were refused. Despite initial difficulties in capturing its well-defended cities, Genghis Khan managed to force the emperor of Xia to submit to vassal status. Jin dynasty. In 1211, after the conquest of Western Xia, Genghis Khan planned again to conquer the Jin dynasty. Wanyan Jujin, the field commander of the Jin army, made a tactical mistake in not attacking the Mongols at the first opportunity. Instead, the Jin commander sent a messenger to the Mongol side, who defected and told the Mongols that the Jin army was waiting on the other side of the pass. At this engagement fought at Yuhuling, the Mongols massacred hundreds of thousands of Jin troops. In 1215, Genghis besieged the Jin capital of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. According to Ivar Listener, the inhabitants resorted to firing gold and silver cannon shot on the Mongols with their muzzle-loading cannons when their supply of metal for ammunition ran out. The city was captured and sacked. This forced the Jin ruler, Emperor Xuanzang, to move his capital south to Kaifeng, abandoning the northern half of his empire to the Mongols. Between 1232 and 1233, Kaifeng fell to the Mongols under the reign of Genghis's third son, Ogedei Khan. The Jin dynasty collapsed in 1234, after the siege of Kazao. Qara Khitai. Kuchlug, the deposed Khan of the Nayman Confederation that Temujin defeated and folded into his Mongol Empire, fled west and usurped the Khanate of Qara Khitai, also known as the Western Liao, as it was originally established as remnants of the Liao dynasty. Genghis Khan decided to conquer the Qara Khitai and defeat Kuchlug, possibly to take him out of power. By this time the Mongol army was exhausted from 10 years of continuous campaigning in China against the Western Xia and Jin dynasty. Therefore, Genghis sent only 2 tumen, 20,000 soldiers, against Kuchlug, under his younger general, Jebe, known as the Arrow. With such a small force, the invading Mongols were forced to change strategies and resort to inciting internal revolt among Kuchlug's supporters, leaving the Qara Khitai more vulnerable to Mongol conquest. As a result, Kuchlug's army was defeated west of Kashgar. Kuchlug fled again, but was soon hunted down by Jebe's army and executed. By 1218, as a result of the defeat of Qara Khitai, the Mongol Empire and its control extended as far west as Lake Balkhash, which bordered Khwarezmia, a Muslim state that reached the Caspian Sea to the west and Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea to the south. Khwarezmian Empire. In the early 13th century, the Khwarezmian dynasty was governed by Shah Allah Anno Domini din Muhammad. Genghis Khan saw the potential advantage in Khwarezmia as a commercial trading partner using the Silk Road, and he initially sent a 500-man caravan to establish official trade ties with the empire. Genghis Khan and his family and commanders invested in the caravan gold, silver, silk, various kinds of textiles and fabrics and pelts to trade with the Muslim traders in the Khwarezmian lands. However, Inalchuk, the governor of the Khwarezmian city of Otrar, attacked the caravan, claiming that the caravan contained spies and therefore was a conspiracy against Khwarezmia. The situation became further complicated because the governor later refused to make repayments for the looting of the caravans and hand over the perpetrators. Genghis Khan then sent a second group of 3 ambassadors, 2 Mongols and a Muslim, to meet the Shah himself, instead of the governor Inalchuk. The Shah had all the men shaved and the Muslim beheaded and sent his head back with the 2 remaining ambassadors. Outraged, Genghis Khan planned one of his largest invasion campaigns by organizing together around 100,000 soldiers, 10 tumens, his most capable generals and some of his sons. He left a commander and number of troops in China, designated his successors to be his family members and likely appointed Ogedei to be his immediate successor and then went out to Khwarezmia. The Mongol army under Genghis Khan, generals and his sons crossed the Tian Shan Mountains by entering the area controlled by the Khwarezmian Empire. After compiling intelligence from many sources, Genghis Khan carefully prepared his army, which was divided into 3 groups. His son Hochi led the 1st division into the northeast of Khwarezmia. The 2nd division under Jebe marched secretly to the southeast part of Khwarezmia to form, with the 1st division, a pincer attack on Samarkand. The 3rd division under Genghis Khan and Tului marched to the northwest and attacked Khwarezmia from that direction. The Shah's army was split by diverse internecine feuds and by the Shah's decision to divide his army into small groups concentrated in various cities. This fragmentation was decisive in Khwarezmia's defeats, as it allowed the Mongols, although exhausted from the long journey, to immediately set about defeating small fractions of the Khwarezmian forces instead of facing a unified defense. The Mongol army quickly seized the town of Otrar, relying on superior strategy and tactics. Genghis Khan ordered the wholesale massacre of many of the civilians, enslaved the rest of the population and executed Inalchuk by pouring molten silver into his ears and eyes, as retribution for his actions. Genghis Khan next advanced on the city of Bukhara, which was not heavily fortified, with just a moat and a single wall, and the citadel typical of Khwarezmian cities. The city leaders opened the gates to the Mongols, though a unit of Turkish defenders held the city's citadel for another 12 days. The survivors from the citadel were executed. Artisans and craftsmen were sent back to Mongolia. Young men who had not fought were drafted into the Mongolian army and the rest of the population was sent into slavery. After the surrender of Bukhara, Genghis Khan also took the unprecedented step of personally entering the city, after which he had the city's aristocrats and elites brought to the mosque, where, through interpreters, he lectured them on their misdeeds, saying, "If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." With the capture of Bukhara, the way was clear for the Mongols to advance on the capital of Samarkand, which possessed significantly better fortifications and a larger garrison compared to Bukhara. To overcome the city, The Mongols engaged in intensive psychological warfare, including the use of captured Khwarezmian prisoners as body shields. After several days, only a few remaining soldiers, loyal supporters of the Shah, held out in the citadel. After the fortress fell, Genghis executed every soldier that had taken arms against him. According to the Persian historian Ata Malik Juvayni, the people of Samarkand were then ordered to evacuate and assemble in a plain outside the city, where they were killed and pyramids of severed heads raised as a symbol of victory. Similarly, Juvayni wrote that in the city Termez, to the south of Samarkand, all the people, both men and women, were driven out onto the plain, and divided in accordance with their usual custom, then they were all slain. Juvayni's account of mass killings at these sites is not corroborated by modern archaeology. Instead of killing local populations, the Mongols tended to enslave the conquered and either send them to Mongolia to act as menial labor or retain them for use in the war effort. The effect was still mass depopulation. The piling of a pyramid of severed heads happened not at Samarkand but at Nishapur, where Genghis Khan's sons-in-law Tokyukar was killed by an arrow shot from the city walls after the residents revolted. The Khan then allowed his widowed daughter, who was pregnant at the time, to decide the fate of the city, and she decreed that the entire population be killed. She also supposedly ordered that every dog, cat and any other animals in the city be slaughtered, so that no living thing would survive the murder of her husband. The sentence was duly carried out by the Khan's youngest son Tului. According to widely circulated but unverified stories, the severed heads were then erected in separate piles for the men, women and children. Near to the end of the battle for Samarkand, the Shah fled rather than surrender. Genghis Khan subsequently ordered two of his generals, Subutai and Jib, to destroy the remnants of the Khwarezmian Empire, giving them 20,000 men and 2 years to do this. The Shah died under mysterious circumstances on a small island in the Caspian Sea that he had retreated to with his remaining loyal forces. Meanwhile, the wealthy trading city of Urgench was still in the hands of Khwarezmian forces. The assault on Urgench proved to be the most difficult battle of the Mongol invasion, and the city fell only after the defenders put up a stout defense, fighting block for block. Mongolian casualties were higher than normal, due to the unaccustomed difficulty of adapting Mongolian tactics to city fighting. As usual, the artisans were sent back to Mongolia, young women and children were given to the Mongol soldiers as slaves, and the rest of the population was massacred. The Persian scholar Juvayni states that 50,000 Mongol soldiers were given the task of executing 24 Urgench citizens each, which would mean that 1.2 million people were killed. These numbers are considered logistically implausible by modern scholars, but the sacking of Urgench was no doubt a bloody affair. Georgia, Crimea, Kievan Rus and Volga Bulgaria. After the defeat of the Khwarezmian Empire in 1220, Genghis Khan gathered his forces in Persia and Armenia to return to the Mongolian steppes. Under the suggestion of Subutai, the Mongol army was split into two forces. Genghis Khan led the main army on a raid through Afghanistan and northern India towards Mongolia, while another 20,000, two Tumen, contingent marched through the Caucasus and into Russia under generals Jib and Subutai. They pushed deep into Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Mongols defeated the Kingdom of Georgia, sacked the Genoese trade fortress of Kaffa in Crimea and overwintered near the Black Sea. Heading home, Subutai's forces attacked the allied forces of the Cuman Kipchaks and the poorly coordinated 80,000 Kievan Rus troops led by Mstislav the Bold of Halych and Mstislav III of Kiev, who went out to stop the Mongols' actions in the area. Subutai sent emissaries to the Slavic princes calling for a separate peace, but the emissaries were executed. At the Battle of Kalka River in 1223, Subutai's forces defeated the larger Kievan force. They may have been defeated by the neighboring Volga Bulgars at the Battle of Samara Bend. There is no historical record except a short account by the Arab historian Ibn al-Athir, writing in Mosul some 1,800 kilometers, 1,100 miles, away from the event. Various historical secondary sources, Morgan, Chambers, Gruset, state that the Mongols actually defeated the Bulgars, Chambers even going so far as to say that the Bulgars had made up stories to tell the recently crushed Russians that they had beaten the Mongols and driven them from their territory. The Russian princes then sued for peace. Subutai agreed but was in no mood to pardon the princes. Not only had the Rus put up strong resistance, but also Jib, with whom Subutai had campaigned for years, had been killed just prior to the Battle of Kalka River. As was customary in Mongol society for nobility, the Russian princes were given a bloodless death. Subutai had a large wooden platform constructed on which he ate his meals along with his other generals. 6 Russian princes, including Mstislav III of Kiev, were put under this platform and crushed to death. The Mongols learned from captives of the abundant green pastures beyond the Bulgar territory, allowing for the planning for conquest of Hungary and Europe. Genghis Khan recalled Subutai back to Mongolia soon afterwards. The famous cavalry expedition led by Subutai and Jib, in which they encircled the entire Caspian Sea defeating all armies in their path, remains unparalleled to this day, and word of the Mongol triumphs began to trickle to other nations, particularly in Europe. These 2 campaigns are generally regarded as reconnaissance campaigns that tried to get the feel of the political and cultural elements of the regions. In 1225 both divisions returned to Mongolia. These invasions added Transoxiana and Persia to an already formidable empire while destroying any resistance along the way. Later under Genghis Khan's grandson Batu and the Golden Horde, the Mongols returned to conquer Volga Bulgaria and Kievan Rus in 1237, concluding the campaign in 1240. Western Xia and Jin dynasty. The vassal emperor of the Tanguts, Western Xia, had earlier refused to take part in the Mongol war against the Khwarezmid Empire. Western Xia and the defeated Jin dynasty formed a coalition to resist the Mongols, counting on the campaign against the Khwarezmians to preclude the Mongols from responding effectively. In 1226, immediately after returning from the west, Genghis Khan began a retaliatory attack on the Tanguts. His armies quickly took Haisui, Ganzhou, and Suzhou, not the Suzhou in Jiangsu province, and in the autumn he took Zilangfu. One of the Tangut generals challenged the Mongols to a battle near Helen Mountains but was defeated. In November, Genghis laid siege to the Tangut city Lingzhou and crossed the Yellow River, defeating the Tangut relief army. According to legend, it was here that Genghis Khan reportedly saw a line of 5 stars arranged in the sky and interpreted it as an omen of his victory. In 1227, Genghis Khan's army attacked and destroyed the Tangut capital of Ningxia and continued to advance, seizing Lintiao-fu, Xining province, Xindu-fu, and Dashan province in quick succession in the spring. At Dashan, the Tangut general Ma Jianlong put up a fierce resistance for several days and personally led charges against the invaders outside the city gate. Ma Jianlong later died from wounds received from arrows in battle. Genghis Khan, after conquering Dashan, went to Liupanshan, Qingshui County, Gansu province, to escape the severe summer. The new Tangut emperor quickly surrendered to the Mongols, and the rest of the Tanguts officially surrendered soon after. Not happy with their betrayal and resistance, Genghis Khan ordered the entire imperial family to be executed, effectively ending the Tangut royal lineage. Succession. The succession of Genghis Khan was already a significant topic during the later years of his reign, as he reached old age. The long-running paternity discussion about Genghis's oldest son Hochi was particularly contentious because of the seniority of Hochi among the brothers. According to traditional historical accounts, the issue over Hochi's paternity was voiced most strongly by Chagatai. In the secret history of the Mongols, just before the invasion of the Khwarezmid Empire by Genghis Khan, Chagatai declared before his father and brothers that he would never accept Hochi as Genghis Khan's successor. In response to this tension and possibly for other reasons, Ogedei was appointed as successor. Ogedei Khan, born Ogedei, circa 1186 December 11, 1241, was the third son of Genghis Khan and second great Khan of the Mongol Empire. He continued the expansion that his father had begun and was a world figure when the Mongol Empire reached its farthest extent west and south during the invasions of Europe and Asia. Hochi. Genghis Khan was aware of the friction between his sons, particularly between Chagatai and Hochi, and worried of possible conflict between them if he died. He therefore decided to divide his empire among his sons and make all of them Khan in their own right, while appointing one of his sons as his successor. Chagatai was considered unstable due to his temper and rash behavior, because of statements he made that he would not follow Hochi if he were to become his father's successor. Tului, Genghis Khan's youngest son, was not suitable since in Mongol culture, youngest sons were not given much responsibility due to their age. If Hochi were to become successor, it was likely that Chagatai would engage in warfare with him and collapse the empire. Therefore, Genghis Khan decided to give the throne to Ogedei. Ogedei was seen by Genghis Khan as dependable in character and relatively stable and down-to-earth and would be a neutral candidate that might diffuse the situation between his brothers. Hochi died in 1226, during his father's lifetime. Some scholars, notably Rachnevsky, have commented on the possibility that Hochi was secretly poisoned by an order from Genghis Khan. Rashid al-Din reports that the Great Khan sent for his sons in the spring of 1223, and while his brothers heeded the order, Hochi remained in Khorasan. Jujani suggests that the disagreement arose from a quarrel between Hochi and his brothers in the siege of Urgench. Hochi had attempted to protect Urgench from destruction, as it belonged to territory allocated to him as a fief. He concludes his story with the clearly apocryphal statement by Hochi: Genghis Khan is mad to have massacred so many people and laid waste so many lands. I would be doing a service if I killed my father when he is hunting, made an alliance with Sultan Muhammad, brought this land to life and gave assistance and support to the Muslims. Jujani claims that it was in response to hearing of these plans that Genghis Khan ordered his son secretly poisoned. However, as Sultan Muhammad was already dead by 1223, the accuracy of this story is questionable. Death and burial. Genghis Khan died in August 1227, during the fall of Yinshuan, which is the capital of Western Xia. The exact cause of his death remains a mystery, and is variously attributed to being killed in action against the Western Xia, illness, falling from his horse, or wounds sustained in hunting or battle. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Genghis Khan fell from his horse while hunting and died because of the injury. He was already old and tired from his journeys. The Galician Volhynian chronicle alleges he was killed by the Western Xia in battle, while Marco Polo wrote that he died after the infection of an arrow wound he received during his final campaign. Later Mongol chronicles connect Genghis's death with a Western Xia princess taken as war booty. One chronicle from the early 17th century even relates the legend that the princess hid a small dagger and stabbed him, though some Mongol authors have doubted this version and suspected it to be an invention by the rival Oirats. Years before his death, Genghis Khan asked to be buried without markings, according to the customs of his tribe. After he died, his body was returned to Mongolia and presumably to his birthplace in Khenti Amag, where many assume he is buried somewhere close to the Onan River and the Burkhan Khaldan Mountain, part of the Khenti mountain range. According to legend, the funeral escort killed anyone and anything across their path to conceal where he was finally buried. The Genghis Khan Mausoleum, constructed many years after his death, is his memorial, but not his burial site. In 1939, Chinese nationalist soldiers took the mausoleum from its position at the Lord's Enclosure, Mongolian, Edson Koru, in Mongolia to protect it from Japanese troops. It was taken through communist-held territory in Yan'an some 900 kilometers, 560 miles on carts to safety at a Buddhist monastery, the Dongshan Dafo Dayan, where it remained for 10 years. In 1949, as communist troops advanced, the nationalist soldiers moved it another 200 kilometers, 120 miles farther west to the famous Tibetan monastery of Kumbum Monastery or Ta'er Shi near Xining, which soon fell under communist control. In early 1954, Genghis Khan's beer and relics were returned to the Lord's Enclosure in Mongolia. By 1956, a new temple was erected there to house them. In 1968, during the Cultural Revolution, Red Guards destroyed almost everything of value. The relics were remade in the 1970s and a great marble statue of Genghis was completed in 1989. On October 6, 2004, a joint Japanese-Mongolian archaeological dig uncovered what is believed to be Genghis Khan's palace in rural Mongolia, which raises the possibility of actually locating the ruler's long-lost burial site. Folklore says that a river was diverted over his grave to make it impossible to find, the same manner of burial as the Sumerian king Gilgamesh of Uruk and Alarik-I. Other tales state that his grave was stampeded over by many horses, and that trees were then planted over the site, and the permafrost also did its part in hiding the burial site. Genghis Khan left behind an army of more than 129,000 men. 28,000 were given to his various brothers and his sons. Tului, his youngest son, inherited more than 100,000 men. This force contained the bulk of the elite Mongolian cavalry. By tradition, the youngest son inherits his father's property. Hochi, Chagatai, Ogadai Khan, and Kulan's son Gelazhan received armies of 4,000 men each. His mother and the descendants of his 3 brothers received 3,000 men each. Mongol Empire. Politics and economics. The Mongol Empire was governed by a civilian and military code, called the Yasa, created by Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire did not emphasize the importance of ethnicity and race in the administrative realm, instead adopting an approach grounded in meritocracy. The Mongol Empire was one of the most ethnically and culturally diverse empires in history, as befitted its size. Many of the empire's nomadic inhabitants considered themselves Mongols in military and civilian life, including the Mongol people, Turkic peoples, and others. There were Khans of various non-Mongolian ethnicities such as Muhammad Khan. There were tax exemptions for religious figures and, to some extent, teachers and doctors. The Mongol Empire practiced religious tolerance because Mongol tradition had long held that religion was a personal concept, and not subject to law or interference. Sometime before the rise of Genghis Khan, Ong Khan, his mentor and eventual rival, had converted to Nestorian Christianity. Various Mongol tribes were shamanist, Buddhist or Christian. Religious tolerance was thus a well-established concept on the Asian steppe. Modern Mongolian historians say that towards the end of his life, Genghis Khan attempted to create a civil state under the Great Yasa that would have established the legal equality of all individuals, including women. However, there is no evidence of this, or of the lifting of discriminatory policies towards sedentary peoples such as the Chinese. Women played a relatively important role in the Mongol Empire and in the family. For example, Torajin Khatun was briefly in charge of the Mongol Empire while the next male leader Khagan was being chosen. Modern scholars refer to the alleged policy of encouraging trade and communication as the Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace. Genghis Khan realized that he needed people who could govern cities and states conquered by him. He also realized that such administrators could not be found among his Mongol people because they were nomads and thus had no experience governing cities. For this purpose, Genghis Khan invited a Khitan prince, Chutsai, who worked for the Jin and had been captured by the Mongol army after the Jin dynasty was defeated. Jin had risen to power by displacing the Khitan people. Genghis told Chutsai, who was a lineal descendant of Khitan rulers, that he had avenged Chutsai's forefathers. Chutsai responded that his father served the Jin dynasty honestly and so did he. Also, he did not consider his own father his enemy, so the question of revenge did not apply. This reply impressed Genghis Khan. Chutsai administered parts of the Mongol Empire and became a confidant of the successive Mongol Khans. Military. Genghis Khan put absolute trust in his generals, such as Mughali, Jebe and Subutai, and regarded them as close advisors, often extending them the same privileges and trust normally reserved for close family members. He allowed them to make decisions on their own when they embarked on campaigns far from the Mongol Empire capital Karakoram. Mughali, a trusted lieutenant, was given command of the Mongol forces against the Jin dynasty while Genghis Khan was fighting in Central Asia, and Subutai and Jebe were allowed to pursue the Great Raid into the Caucasus and Kievan Rus, an idea they had presented to the Khagan on their own initiative. While granting his generals a great deal of autonomy in making command decisions, Genghis Khan also expected unwavering loyalty from them. The Mongol military was also successful in siege warfare, cutting off resources for cities and towns by diverting certain rivers, taking enemy prisoners and driving them in front of the army, and adopting new ideas, techniques and tools from the people they conquered, particularly in employing Muslim and Chinese siege engines and engineers to aid the Mongol cavalry in capturing cities. Another standard tactic of the Mongol military was the commonly practiced feigned retreat to break enemy formations and to lure small enemy groups away from the larger group and defended position for ambush and counterattack. Another important aspect of the military organization of Genghis Khan was the communications and supply route or YAM, adapted from previous Chinese models. Genghis Khan dedicated special attention to this in order to speed up the gathering of military intelligence and official communications. To this end, YAM waystations were established all over the empire. Khanates. Several years before his death, Genghis Khan divided his empire among his sons Ogadai, Chagatai, Tului, and Hochi. Hochi's death several months before Genghis Khan's meant that his lands were instead split between his sons, Batu and Orda, into several khanates designed as sub-territories after Genghis Khan. Contrary to popular belief, Genghis Khan did not conquer the whole area of the eventual Mongol Empire. At the time of his death in 1227, the empire stretched from the Caspian Sea to the Sea of Japan. Its expansion continued for one or more generations. Under Genghis's successor Ogadai Khan, the speed of expansion reached its peak. Mongol armies pushed into Persia, finished off the Western Xia and the remnants of the Khwarezmids, clashed with the imperial Song dynasty of China, and eventually took control of all of China in 1279. They also pushed further into Russia and Eastern Europe. Perceptions. Like other notable conquerors, Genghis Khan is portrayed differently by conquered peoples than those who conquered with him. Negative views persist in histories written by many cultures from different geographical regions. They often cite the systematic slaughter of civilians in conquered regions, cruelties and destruction by Mongol armies. Other authors also cite positive aspects of Genghis Khan's conquests. Positive. Genghis Khan is credited with bringing the Silk Road under one cohesive political environment. This allowed increased communication and trade between the West, Middle East and Asia, thus expanding the horizons of all three cultural areas. Some historians have noted that Genghis Khan instituted certain levels of meritocracy in his rule, was tolerant of religions and explained his policies clearly to all his soldiers. In Mongolia, Genghis Khan had been revered for centuries by Mongols and certain other ethnic groups such as the Turkic peoples, largely because of his association with Mongol statehood, political and military organization, and his victories in war. He eventually evolved into a larger-than-life figure chiefly among the Mongols and is still considered the symbol of Mongolian culture. During the communist period in Mongolia, Genghis was often described by the government as a reactionary figure, and positive statements about him were avoided. In 1962, the erection of a monument at his birthplace and a conference held in commemoration of his 800th birthday led to criticism from the Soviet Union and the dismissal of Secretary Tomer Ochir of the ruling Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party Central Committee. In the early 1990s, the memory of Genghis Khan underwent a powerful revival, partly in reaction to its suppression during the Mongolian People's Republic period. Genghis Khan became one of the central figures of the national identity. He is considered positively by Mongolians for his role in uniting warring tribes. For example, Mongolians often refer to their country as Genghis Khan's Mongolia, to themselves as Genghis Khan's children, and to Genghis Khan as the father of the Mongols, especially among the younger generation. However, there is a chasm in the perception of his brutality. Mongolians maintain that the historical records written by non-Mongolians are unfairly biased against Genghis Khan and that his butchery is exaggerated, while his positive role is underrated. In Mongolia today, Genghis Khan's name and likeness appear on products, streets, buildings, and other places. Mongolia's main international airport in Ulaanbaatar is named Chinggis Khan International Airport. Major Genghis Khan statues stand before the parliament in near Ulaanbaatar. There have been repeated discussions about regulating the use of his name and image to avoid trivialization. Genghis Khan is regarded as one of the most prominent leaders in Mongolia's history. He is responsible for the emergence of the Mongols as a political and ethnic identity because there was no unified identity between the tribes that had cultural similarity. He reinforced many Mongol traditions and provided stability and unity during a time of almost endemic warfare between tribes. He is also credited for introducing the traditional Mongolian script and creating the first written Mongolian code of law, the Ikh Zasig, Great Administration. Mongolian President Sakyagin Elbegdorj has noted that the Ikh Zasig heavily punished corruption and bribery, and he considers Genghis Khan a teacher for anti-corruption efforts who sought equal protection under the law for all citizens regardless of status or wealth. On the 850th anniversary of Genghis's birth, the president stated, "Chinggis was a man who deeply realized that the justice begins and consolidates with the equality of law, and not with the distinctions between people. He was a man who knew that the good laws and rules lived longer than fancy palaces." In summary, many Mongolians see him as the fundamental figure in the unification of the various Mongolian tribes, leading to the founding of the empire. Therefore, Genghis Khan can be seen as the basis for Mongolia as a unified sovereign state. As of 2012, Elbegdorj issued a decree establishing Genghis Khan's birthday as a national holiday on the first day of winter, according to the Mongolian lunar calendar. In Europe, Genghis Khan had a positive reputation among some Western European authors in the Middle Ages, who knew little concrete information about his empire in Asia. The Italian explorer Marco Polo said that Genghis Khan was a man of great worth, and of great ability and valor. In Japan, Japanese such as Kencho Sayamatsu have claimed that the ethnic Japanese Minamoto no Yoshitsune was Genghis Khan. Mixed. In China, there are conflicting views of Genghis Khan in the People's Republic of China. The legacy of Genghis and his successors, who completed the conquest of China after 65 years of struggle, remains a mixed topic. China suffered a drastic decline in population. The population of North China decreased from 50 million in the 1195 census to 8.5 million in the Mongol census of 1235-36. However, most of them were victims of plague, floods and famine long after the war in northern China was over in 1234 and were not killed by Mongols. The effects of a new governance system under the Mongols could still have affected the economic and social lives of the population. Since the 1340s, Yuan China experienced problems. The Yellow River flooded constantly, and other natural disasters also occurred. At the same time, the Yuan dynasty required considerable military expenditure to maintain its vast empire. The Black Death also contributed to the birth of the Red Turban movement. Other groups or religious sects made an effort to undermine the power of the last Yuan rulers. These religious movements often warned of impending doom. Decline of agriculture, plague and cold weather hit China, spurring the armed rebellion. In Hebei, 9 out of 10 were killed by the Black Death when Togun Timur was enthroned in 1333. 2 out of 3 people in China had died of the plague by 1351. An unknown number of people migrated to southern China in this period. James Watterson cautioned against attributing the population drop in northern China to Mongol slaughter, since much of the population may have moved to southern China under the Southern Song or died of disease and famine as agricultural and urban city infrastructure were destroyed. The Mongols spared cities from massacre and sacking if they surrendered, like Kaifeng, which was surrendered to Subutai by Shu Li, Yangzhou, which was surrendered to Bayan by Li Tingzi's second-in-command after Li Tingzi was executed by the Southern Song, and Hangzhou was spared from sacking when it surrendered to Kublai Khan. Han Chinese and Khitan soldiers defected en masse to Genghis Khan against the Jurchen Jin dynasty. Towns which surrendered were spared from sacking and massacre by Kublai Khan. Khitan did not like leaving their homeland in Manchuria, as the Jin moved their primary capital from Beijing south to Kaifeng and defected to the Mongols. In Inner Mongolia there are a monument and buildings dedicated to him and considerable number of ethnic Mongols in the area, with a population of around 5 million, almost twice the population of Mongolia. While Genghis never conquered all of China, his grandson Kublai Khan completed that conquest and established the Yuan dynasty that is often credited with reuniting China. There has been much artwork and literature praising Genghis as a military leader and political genius. The Mongol-established Yuan dynasty left an indelible imprint on Chinese political and social structures for subsequent generations, with literature during the preceding Jin dynasty relatively fewer. In Russia, Genghis Khan has a predominantly negative reputation in Russia, although he is perceived positively in Buryatia, the republic of the Mongol-speaking Buryats in the Russian Federation. According to the chief editor of Novaya Buryatia, Timur Dugerzhapov, Genghis Khan was always a folk hero among the Buryat people. But in Buryatia, even today, children learn how terrible the Mongol yoke was, how it set Russia back and was responsible for all sort of historic ills. Negative. The conquests and leadership of Genghis Khan included widespread devastation and mass murder. The targets of campaigns that refused to surrender would often be subject to reprisals in the form of enslavement and wholesale slaughter. The second campaign against Western Xia, the final military action led by Genghis Khan, and during which he died, involved an intentional and systematic destruction of Western Xia cities and culture. According to John Mann, because of this policy of total obliteration, Western Xia is little known to anyone other than experts in the field, because so little record is left of that society. He states that there is a case to be made that this was the first ever recorded example of attempted genocide. It was certainly very successful ethnocide. In the conquest of Khwarezmia under Genghis Khan, the Mongols razed the cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, Herat, Tus, and Nayshabur and killed the respective urban populations. His invasions are considered the beginning of a 200-year period known in Iran and other Islamic societies as the Mongol catastrophe. Ibn al-Athir, Atta Malik Juvaini, Siraj al-Din Jozjani, and Rashid al-Din Faisal al-Hamadani, Iranian historians from the time of Mongol occupation, describe the Mongol invasions as a catastrophe never before seen. A number of present-day Iranian historians, including Zabi al-Asafa, have likewise viewed the period initiated by Genghis Khan as a uniquely catastrophic era. Stephen R. Ward writes that the Mongol violence and depredations in the Iranian plateau killed up to 3/4 of the population, possibly 10 to 15 million people. Some historians have estimated that Iran's population did not again reach its pre-Mongol levels until the mid-20th century. Although the famous Mughal emperors were proud descendants of Genghis Khan and particularly Timur, they clearly distanced themselves from the Mongol atrocities committed against the Khwarezm Shahs, Turks, Persians, the citizens of Baghdad and Damascus, Nishapur, Bukhara, and historical figures such as Attar of Nishapur and many other notable Muslims. However, Mughal emperors directly patronized the legacies of Genghis Khan and Timur. Together their names were synonymous with the names of other distinguished personalities, particularly among the Muslim populations of South Asia. Descent. In addition to most of the Mongol nobility up to the 20th century, the Mughal Emperor Babur's mother was a descendant. Timur, also known as Tamerlane, the 14th century military leader, and many other nobilities of Central Asian countries claimed descent from Genghis Khan. During the Soviet purge, most of the Mongol nobility in Mongolia were purged. Physical appearance. Unlike most emperors, Genghis Khan never allowed his image to be portrayed in paintings or sculptures. The earliest known images of Genghis Khan were produced half a century after his death, including the famous National Palace Museum portrait in Taiwan. Though the portrait in the National Palace Museum is often considered the closest resemblance to what Genghis Khan actually looked like, it, like all others, is essentially an arbitrary rendering. These earliest images were commissioned by Kublai Khan and intentionally cynicized Genghis Khan as a Han-looking person, in order to posthumously legitimate him as a Chinese emperor. Other portrayals of Genghis Khan from other cultures likewise characterized him according to their particular image of him. In Persia he was portrayed as a Turkic sultan, in Europe he was pictured as an ugly barbarian with a fierce face and cruel eyes. According to sinologist Herbert Allen Giles, a painter known as Holi Hosun, also known as Khwarezmia or Khwarezmia, was a Mongol commissioned by Kublai Khan in 1278 to paint the portrait of Genghis Khan, National Palace Museum portrait. Under Kublai Khan's supervision, he ordered Khwarezmia along with the other entrusted remaining followers of Genghis Khan to make sure that the portrait of Genghis Khan reflected his true image. The only individuals to have recorded Genghis Khan's physical appearance during his lifetime were the Persian chronicler Manhaj al-Siraj Jujani and Chinese diplomat Zhao Hong. Manhaj al-Siraj described Genghis Khan as a man of tall stature, of vigorous build, robust in body, the hair of his face scanty and turned white, with cat's eyes, possessed of dedicated energy, discernment, genius, and understanding, awe-striking. The chronicler had also previously commented on Genghis Khan's height, powerful build, with cat's eyes and lack of gray hair, based on the evidence of eyewitnesses in 1220, which saw Genghis Khan fighting in the Khorasan, modern-day northwest Persia. According to Paul Rachnevsky, the Song dynasty envoy Zhao Hong, who visited the Mongols in 1221, described Genghis Khan as of tall and majestic stature, his brow is broad and his beard is long. Other descriptions of Genghis Khan come from 14th century texts. The Persian historian Rashid al-Din in Jami, al-Tawarikh, written in the beginning of the 14th century, stated that most Borjigin ancestors of Genghis Khan were tall, long-bearded, red-haired, and bluish-green-eyed, features which Genghis Khan himself had. The factual nature of this statement is considered controversial. In the Georgian Chronicles, in a passage written in the 14th century, Genghis Khan is similarly described as a large, good-looking man, with red hair. However, according to John Andrew Boyle, Rashid al-Din's text of red hair referred to ruddy skin complexion, and that Genghis Khan was of ruddy complexion like most of his children except for Kublai Khan, who was swarthy. He translated the text as, "It chanced that he was born 2 months before Mogue, and when Chinggis Khan's eye fell upon him he said, 'All our children are of a ruddy complexion, but this child is swarthy like his maternal uncles. Tell Sorkakhtani Beki to give him to a good nurse to be reared.'" 14th century Arabic historian Shihab al-Umari also disputed Rashid al-Din's translation and claimed Al-Angua falsified the origin of her clan. Some historians such as Denise Agel claimed that Rashid al-Din mythicized the origin of Genghis Khan ancestors through his own interpretations of the secret history of the Mongols. Italian historian Igor de Reichewiltz claimed that the Mongol origins of the early ancestors of Genghis Khan were animals born from the blue-eye wolf and the fallow doe that was described in the early legends, that their ancestors were animals. Depictions in modern culture. There have been several films, novels and other adaptation works on the Mongolian ruler. This audio uses material from the Wikipedia article Genghis Khan and .wikipedia.org/wiki/Genghis_Khan, which is released under the license Creative Commons. Attribution Share Alike 3.0 Unported. CC by SA 3.0 creativecommons.org/licenses/by SA/3.0